You know, this time of year I call it my catch-up month because in May everything happens at once and it's easy to get behind because there's so much to be done in the garden. But if you can remember to stay busy with disbudding perennials and keeping things thinned out and weeded, it'll make the rest of your summer a lot more pleasant. Now right now I'm just deadheading some peonies. I have a rose bush mixed in with it, and I've got some nice blossoms coming on that blend together with this particular color. But I've got to stay ahead of the game in order to keep plenty of room in the garden. Because look what happens when you get a little overcrowded or a little bit too much rain. If you look down the corner here, these bluebells are suffering from powdery mildew fungus. And although I've tried to keep them thinned out and plenty of air movement around them, there's been so much rainy, wet weather that they developed a good case of powdery mildew, and there's really not a lot I can do about that at this point. Now looking back on up here, here's an example of what disease resistance can do for you. This is Christopher Columbus rose, and I just need to take this one off that's gone on by and disbud it because I've got some nice ones coming along here. Now Christopher Columbus is disease resistant. It was introduced just a few years ago. However, it's not aphid resistant, and I've got a little bit of damage started right here. Now if aphids start feeding on your roses, you can start off with a hard spray of water to keep them at bay. If that doesn't work, try some insecticidal soap. But I just want to show you that there's no black spot on here. There's some Oklahoma soil that rained on from the sky, but there is no black spot. And in my yard, with small children around and a busy schedule, I don't have time to spray everything, and I wouldn't want to anyway. So if it's a rose, if it won't survive on its own, it doesn't go in the yard. And here's another rose called Brass Band. It's another one of the new, more disease-resistant varieties. I have a ladybug working on there. Hopefully she's going to find some aphids, but again, no black spot. Now if you have some perennials that are looking overcrowded, like these hardy phlox right here, let me give you a tip on how to keep powdery mildew to a minimum. If you'll just go down to the base of the plant and thin out about every other stalk, you're going to find that the remaining ones are going to bloom more fully. You're going to end up with a nicer clump of plants than if you left it too full. And that'll help with powdery mildew control. Now, while you've got pruners in your hand, there's something else that's going on in the garden right now with a lot of chrysanthemums. Some of them have bloomed and have grown so well and are growing so lushly that they've already set some buds on them. Let me show you how to trim those back for a good fall harvest. It's only late May, and we're already getting what looks like early fall color on the mums. They're already forming buds on the tips, and that'd be okay if you don't mind having mums blooming in early summer. But what's going to happen is if you don't prune them back now, you won't get the nice fall color that you'll be expecting. So what I'm doing is I'm just going through and cutting these back by about 1/3 to 1/2. And what that's going to do for me is that's going to help branch out the growth, make a stronger, stouter plant that won't fall over this fall, and hopefully by giving it a haircut, we're going to stop that early bud and give it time long about the 1st of July to start setting buds for fall. So the thing to do is get this done now in a timely fashion so that you will have some fall color, and save the summer color for things that are supposed to bloom right now, like phlox and roses. You know, the Hosta is one of the greatest garden plants you can put in. It's an herbaceous perennial, meaning of course that all of this dies down every fall. But what foliage and form you can end up with in the landscape once you have them established. Usually Hosta plants are sold in 1-gallon containers in the nursery, and although they may seem a little bit costly initially, they give you a tremendous amount of variety in the landscape. Take this one right here, that's the ventricosa type. It gets large. I've only had this in this spot for 2 summers, and in a few weeks it's going to send up a flower spike that will stand about 3.5 feet in the air, a tall white spike of flowers that is very appealing to certain insects as well. Then over beyond it, there's a smaller form. They come in different sizes. This one in the middle is called Golden Tiara. The Golden Tiara is not going to get very large at all, and it has a splash of yellow along the margins. It's very appealing. There's another type that's very common called Albo marginata that has a white edge instead of a yellow edge. Then on beyond that, I've just planted one that is Hosta sieboldiana, and it is a blue form that has a blue bloom or waxy coating over the foliage and gives a totally different look in the landscape. All of them will bloom eventually, although some, like this, are more noted for their flowers than almost any other feature about them. Now, one problem people have with hostas is, first of all, they try to plant them in full sun, and they really must have shade, a lot of organic matter, and plenty of moisture in the soil in order to survive well. And they may not do very much for you the first year, but once they're established, they'll grow very well. If you look back under here, this plant could almost be divided now. It's clumped out into a bunch of different plants, and possibly next spring, when the buds are first coming up, I could dig that up and split it apart with a sharp spade and divide it. But probably I'll leave it right where it is for a few years. Now you may be wondering what this white stuff is down at the base of the plant. Well, when I'm walking around the garden doing some maintenance, if I'm going to work on the hostas, if I'm pulling weeds around them, I save up a few eggshells. These are from some hard-boiled eggs I had in the house, and I always tuck those back under around the plants. The reason for that is that we have problems around here with snails, but we also have trouble with slugs. And a real common sign of damage that you'll find on hostas are nice, neat little holes. And I'm sort of proud to say that I haven't found any on these today, but slug damage on hostas will look like round to elliptical or oval-shaped holes in the plants. They climb up them at night and they chew on them. Well, if you put eggshells at the bottom of the plants, that really is a very good deterrent. They don't like crawling over the sharp edges of the eggshells, and it will help keep slugs at bay. So you might try that on your hostas, and certainly give this plant a try in your shade landscape this summer. As I said just a minute ago, timing is everything in the garden, and bird netting your fruit trees is one of those that makes a big difference if you're paying attention. Take a look at these sour cherries. The birds have already been after them. In fact, I put the netting on a few days ago when these were just a bare yellow color, and that's when the birds really get after them. I just picked these out from under the netting. And timing is everything on sour and sweet cherries, both. If you take a look on up here, the canopy of the tree, these fruits right here that are yellow and just barely have a bit of blush are the stage at which you need to start putting the bird netting on. The birds already have these pegged out, they're ready to go feed on them, and you need to get the netting on. And it's not enough just to put the netting over the top of the tree. For your sake and for the sake of not catching unwary birds in there, you need to take it all the way down to the base of the tree. I've got behind this yarrow here, I've got a chicken wire little fence around the tree to protect it when it was young, and we've secured the bird netting all the way down to there using clothespins, making sure it's completely enclosing the tree so the birds can't get in there and get trapped. We had an unfortunate incident this spring where a young woodpecker was trapped in one of our other fruit trees, and it was sort of sad for us. We want to make sure that they're not harmed, but you do want to protect your fruit. Now, this is a North Star variety of sour cherry, and it's a dwarf sour cherry. Most sour cherry trees are going to get really big, probably as tall as your house, and this one stays naturally dwarf. I do prune it every year to keep it fairly short, but as you can see, it's a nice specimen tree for the front yard landscape, for an edible landscape, and we think it gives us enough for probably a couple of cobblers every year, and that's enough to suit us. But one last tip on sour cherries and sweet cherries: once they turn red, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're ripe, and you'll find that out by the taste test. The main thing you want to do is have some patience. Once they turn red, give them another maybe week to 10 days before you pick them so they'll reach their full ripe sweetness.